Oh, yeah, the great voice of Johnny Moore and the Drifters, of course, kissing in the back row of the movies. Now then, talking about the movies, the job of the cinema projectionist is often romanticised, but is it really all glamour and stardust? Well, one man who knows all about it is a lad called Phil Rosen, who at nearly 80 years old has just written his first book. Non-Sync, Tabs and Cream Soda is about Phil's years as a cinema projectionist in local cinemas back in the 1950s, and he joins me live in the studio this morning. Hello, Phil.
Hello.
So, just explain the title for us. Non-Sync, Tabs and Cream Soda. Well, I know what cream soda is.
Okay, well, starting with the non-sync bit, when sound films first came in the 1920s, the sound was carried on an ordinary big record disc, so the films would arrive in cans, and so would a load of records. The records would be stuck on the back of the projector and rotated at the same speed as the film, so that the whole thing was synchronised.
Okay.
But then when the soundtrack was invented, they didn't need that anymore, but they did have a separate gramophone to play the interval music. This wasn't synchronised to the projector, so this was simply called the non-sync. You played your records on the non-sync in the interval.
Right.
And the tabs were the curtains across the screen. And the cream soda was because it was such a hot, dry, dusty job that we drank gallons of the stuff.
So what was it like in the projection room? I mean, you know, it's a small area, you know. You've got to be on the ball. You've got to know what you're doing, haven't you?
Yes, especially if you're sober. I mean, we had... I worked with an awful lot of chaps during the 7 years I was in the industry.
Yeah.
And it tended to be people with all sorts of difficulties. One was couldn't hold his liquor, and we had terrible problems with him putting the wrong reels on, putting the reels on upside down and so on, which didn't go down at all well. We had another chap who was using the job as a sort of front for his stealing activities. He'd pinch all sorts of stuff and hide it in the projection room and then flog it afterwards. We had another bloke who was very, very poor and eventually hung himself because just didn't have enough to eat. So but it was a very mixed sort of environment. But
it sounds like. So did you really have to watch the films over and over again yourself? Did you have to sit through every film?
Yeah, when I first started, it was at a little cinema called The Kings in Wallasey, and we showed 4 films a week, so that meant that we didn't see any particular film all that often. But when it turned itself into the Continental, we might show a film for 2 or 3 weeks. So we'd see the same film 20, 30 times.
So what period of time did you work as a projectionist?
From 1948 to 1954.
I mean, a great era for cinema, that, isn't it?
Yeah, well, in the town where I lived in Wallasey, there were 13 cinemas then. I don't think there's one left now.
Really?
And everybody went to the cinema in those days with no telly. People went to the cinema once or twice a week, and it didn't cost much, you know, a bob for the cinema.
So what? I mean, obviously full houses most of the time then for you.
Well, towards the end, when I eventually got out of the industry, televisions were just beginning to come in, and we could see the cinemas beginning to empty out. And eventually they started closing one after another. Right. Just wasn't enough business there.
Are you surprised it's still as big as it is today, cinema?
Yeah, I am. Because for many, many years, 20 years or so, cinemas just disappeared off the face of the earth. Now they've sort of come back again as the big multi-screen cinemas, usually outside town centres where people can park. But the job of the projectionist is now totally different. I've kept tabs on things, and in the last year or so, the silicon chip has begun to come in. So instead of a great big rack of tins of film you had to move around, you'd have one little silicon chip to push into your computer, and off you'd go.
Really?
And
that's taking the skill away, isn't it?
It is. Hey? Well, when I used to work, it's a big cinema like the Odeon that have 7 projectionists for one screen. Nowadays, at the multi-screen cinemas, they have one little bloke sitting in a corner watching 7 different screens.
Oh,
so, you know, it's totally changed now.
Do you know what I've always wanted to know? Do you know if there was no one in for a film, would you still run it?
Yeah, we'd have to.
Right.
I don't think it ever happened in my experience, but we've certainly run a film with 2 or 3 people sort of stood at the back of the cinema.
Right. So was the back row popular in your day?
Yeah, we started putting in double seats, of course, for that reason.
Yeah.
We even glassed in 1 or 2 of them, but then we thought that was going a bit too far.
Well, I don't think they'd have noticed that drunk fellow was putting the films on upside down or not. They
certainly wouldn't have cared at all.
So when did you decide to put the book together then?
I put the book together about 30 years ago and tried it out on a few publishers, but they said it was too narrow an interest. So I stuck it on the back shelf where it gathered dust. And then about a year or so ago, my son-in-law, who was an IT merchant, went down with meningitis. And he took this publication of this book on a sort of rehab project. So it came out about 2 weeks ago. It's available on Amazon.
Yeah.
And I'm really using it as a sort of means of trying to get him back into the swing of things again. And I'm hoping the profits from this book will go to the Meningitis Trust.
Sure. I think it's a fabulous subject. I mean, people want to know about them things, don't they?
Well, I hope so. And
well, I do. I think people love cinema. It's my favourite night out, the cinema. But going back to the day when you worked in the cinema, there was a lot more to it, as you say, and you've got a wealth of stories and characters in the book, haven't you?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and strangely enough, on our one night off a week, quite often we got the pictures. Usually the big town cinemas like the Odeon or the Gorman, where they showed the new films that we couldn't afford to show in the little places we ran.
So you couldn't afford to buy in the big films, no?
No. In the little cinemas in Wallasey where I worked, the films would be 6 months, a year or so old. It'd be full of cracks and tears which had to be patched together.
Really?
And, it was a different world. We'd work from 10 in the morning till midnight, 6 days a week, about 80 hours a week for a very small pay.
I bet you the refreshments have changed somewhat, haven't they? It's like a supermarket now in the reception of a cinema, isn't it?
Yeah, well, in my book here, I talk about the first refrigerator we bought for the cinema. Until then, if the customers wanted ices, we had to fetch them from a nearby shop. But then we got our first fridge in, so that at least they could have ice cream for the interval.
Go away. So the book's called Non-Sink Tabs and Cream Soda. It's available on Amazon, Phil, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the princely price was $6.99.
So $6.99. Check it out, folks. A cracking book. All about Phil's life as a cinema projectionist, the highs and lows, and have a great career. Phil, lovely to meet you, and thanks for coming in and telling us about it.
Thank you very much indeed.
I look forward to reading it. There you go. There it is, Non-Sink Tabs and Cream Soda, the story of a cinema projectionist from a golden age, an absolutely wonderful time, the 50s, Hollywood's golden age. It's Sean Stiles on BBC Radio Merseyside. A very, very good morning to you.